It's a bright and early, sunny July morning. You get up, you get out of bed, and you go and check your phone. And you see the latest news bulletin, monkeypox spreading like wildfire. Now, the United States has 2,000 cases of this dangerous disease. And you ask yourself, well, we have the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic that went on, and that is still going on now. Is monkeypox really that dangerous? But because you're a listener of the science behind that, you go downstairs, grab yourself a cup of coffee, and turn on the latest episode of The Science Behind That, where we discuss monkeypox.
Welcome to The Science Behind That with Atticus Hamilton.
Hello, all you scientists, and welcome on back to The Science Behind That. I'm your host, Atticus Hamilton, and as you heard from the intro, today we are talking about monkeypox. So, we're going to try and break down today monkeypox's origins, what it's similar to, its symptoms, and whether or not you need to be concerned about it. Spoiler alert, not really, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. First off, so monkeypox is in the same family as smallpox, horsepox, and cowpox. Overall, that family is called Poxviridae, and out of all of those four, only two are still in existence, monkeypox and cowpox. Currently, every year, there's only around 150 cases of cowpox, and so the prevalence of that virus is significantly decreasing. But monkeypox is a little different. So currently there's 2,891 people in the United States that are infected with monkeypox. And I was watching a news program the other night, and I don't remember what this guy's qualifications were, but he was on there being like, it's a pandemic of monkeypox and everyone needs to worry about it. I'd like to break down for you guys the difference between a cluster, an outbreak, an epidemic, a pandemic, and a plague, because there are differences there. So a cluster is like 10 cases, 10 or less cases. It's a handful of cases of a disease in one location. An epidemic is an outbreak is hundreds of cases of a disease, again, in probably one location, maybe two or three, but in the same country. And then an epidemic is thousands of cases, but in multiple countries, maybe like one or two countries. A pandemic is hundreds of thousands to millions of cases so millions of cases and hundreds of thousands dead across the globe. And then a plague is tens of millions of cases and millions dead, or hundreds of thousands dead. And that's a plague. So some plagues throughout history were basically bubonic plague, and 1918 Spanish flu is technically categorized as a plague. So this current event of monkeypox is an epidemic. It is not a pandemic, and it is certainly not a plague. Monkeypox, compared to its cousins, is not that deadly. It's not really deadly at all. It has a case fatality rate of at most around 1%. Generally, it's less than that. It's like 0.5%. Very few people die from monkeypox because, in all honesty, it doesn't do the same things that smallpox did. So with smallpox, there were two different forms of smallpox initially when it first appeared around 5,000 years ago. There was variola major and there was variola minor. Now, variola major was much less severe than variola minor, with only around a 30% case fatality rate. Now, I know I say only, and you guys are like, Atticus, that's far more than corona, and you're right, it is. In the 20th century alone, smallpox killed 500 million people. And that was variola major. But variola minor had a case fatality rate of around 60%. and that went extinct in 1700, whereas variola major went extinct in 1977 because of a global eradication effort. Now, one more thing before we get too much deeper into this. Some of you guys are going to be like, Atticus, what about chickenpox? Chickenpox is not a pox virus. It is a herpes virus, so it's in a different family. Now, that leads us nicely into how these things are named, right? Because you have chickenpox, you have monkeypox, you have smallpox. So these are old diseases. And because they're old diseases, they were named either after the person who discovered them or based on the physiological characterization of the disease. Because, in 1300, when smallpox was first categorized, we didn't have electron microscopes, and we didn't have the ability to do molecular diagnostics. So it was basically just categorized on the symptoms and the clinical presentation. And so when smallpox was first named, we already knew that syphilis existed. Now, smallpox is kind of a deceptive name because if you've ever seen the pustules of smallpox, they're not small at all. They're big, almost abscess-like pustules. Now, why was it called smallpox instead of large pox? Because syphilis was called large pox. So you couldn't have two large poxes, so they named smallpox. And the only reason I bring this up is to just reflect to you that chickenpox is not a member of the Poxviridae family because the common name has virtually no relation to the family of viruses that the virus is in. Sorry, I need a sip of my coffee there. So back to monkeypox then. So monkeypox is called monkeypox because it came from monkeys. The very first cases of monkeypox were from chimpanzee to human transmission, and monkeys themselves can develop symptoms of monkeypox. So that's why it's called monkeypox. And I know there's some people out there who want to change the name for really no reason. That's why it's called monkeypox. Anyway, so the symptoms of monkeypox generally include fever, headache, muscle aches, backache, swollen lymph nodes, chills, fatigue, and of course a rash. So the rash is really important. The rash starts in the mouth, in the back of the throat, and from there it spreads out to cover the surface of the face and the neck, and from there it spreads downwards over the chest, hands, feet, and genitals eventually. And this is important because monkeypox is generally transmitted through sex. Now, it's not only transmitted through sex. It can be transmitted through close direct contact with the rash, scabs, or bodily fluids, or respiratory secretions during very, very close contact, so like kissing. That could spread it. But in general, it's spread through sex. At least that's the most common route of transmission. And this is important because smallpox, so you can get monkeypox through touching items that had touched the infectious rash, but it's far less likely. And the reason has to do with how the pustules are expressed. So smallpox is different than monkeypox in that it's spread very fast through not that close of contact, through talking to somebody, respiratory secretions, or through contact with clothing. And the reason was because smallpox pustules ruptured really quick, and they produced a lot of pus, and it's that pus that's infectious. And so when somebody had smallpox and they were talking to you, much like with monkeypox, the rash first appears in the back of the throat. And so when they would talk to you, those pustules in the back of the throat would rupture, and they'd basically be spitting pus in your face, which is a horrible thing to think about. But that doesn't really happen with monkeypox. It does eventually, because the pustules do kind of rupture with monkeypox, but not to the same severity as they did with smallpox. And so in that sense, it's a lot less infectious. Additionally, smallpox also used to, when it infected somebody, it would cause basically pustules on the internal organs. Monkeypox does not do that. It is almost strictly a cosmetic sort of disease, meaning that it almost exclusively affects the skin and the epidermis, which is different than smallpox. And that's why smallpox was so deadly, because smallpox caused septicemia. But monkeypox does not cause septicemia. So, all things considered, then, is monkeypox really something that you should worry about? And in my professional opinion, because I am a microbiologist, in my professional opinion, it's not really something that you need to worry about. And, the main reason I say that is because, A, the biggest risk factors are older people or people with suppressed immune systems. And, you're not going to get it really. I mean, you could, but in general, you're not going to get it from just talking to your neighbor, Phil. You know what I mean? So the primary way you're going to get it is by making out with somebody who's sick, or having sex with somebody who's sick, or any type of very long direct contact with them. And it's just unlikely for that to happen to the highest risk group of individuals, older people or people who are immunocompromised, because they're not, having direct close contact with a lot of different people to the same extent that young people are in general. And so that automatically decreases your risk of getting the disease. And number two, as I said, it has a very, very, very low case fatality rate. 1% at the max, generally less than 1%. And so the likelihood that if you get, the likelihood that you're going to get monkeypox is low. There's only 2,891 cases in the United States, and that's pretty low. You're a lot more likely to get SARS-CoV-2 than monkeypox. And B, the likelihood that if you get it, you're going to die from it is extremely low. Far less likely than that of SARS-CoV-2. Now, it's not impossible, but it's just very, very unlikely, especially for a young and healthy person. And so is monkeypox something to worry about? I mean, if you're going out and meeting a bunch of new people, then I guess it's, just like with every sexually transmitted disease or disease that's primarily spread through close contact, it's something to keep in the back of your mind. But to worry about it, I don't really think that it's something to worry about. It's definitely not the next great pandemic. And that brings me to something else. I saw on, again, a news program the other day. I'm not going to say the platform because, I don't want to hurt their feelings for the bad reporting. But, the news reporter asked this random dude who I guess had qualifications somehow, could this mutate and turn into some deadlier form? And he was like, well, that's possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really important. Smallpox was around for 5,000 years ago, right? And during that time, there were really only two major mutations, variola minor and variola major. Monkeypox is a double-stranded DNA virus, and for all of you virologists out there, you know why that's important. That's important because that means its genome is extremely stable. So the likelihood that you're going to get massive alterations is extremely unlikely. And you would have to get massive alterations to monkeypox to make it lethal, or to make it very lethal. That would require massive alterations, let alone the alterations required to, or the mutations required to, make it more contagious. So the likelihood that we're going to see significant mutations in monkeypox that shift it from a relatively non-lethal, poor spreading disease into an extremely lethal and highly contagious disease is very, very, very unlikely. Just because it is a very large virus with a genome length of around 190,000 bases, which is huge for a virus, and it's double-stranded DNA, which is the most stable genetic material that we know of currently. And it has a DNA-dependent DNA polymerase and a DNA-dependent RNA polymerase, and both of those have proof check mechanisms that check the replication to make sure that any mutations that occur are corrected. Single-stranded RNA viruses don't really have that, but double-stranded DNA viruses, you betcha they have that. And they use host cellular machinery as well to replicate their genome. And so because of that, although smallpox doesn't use host DNA polymerase, it brings its own because it replicates in the cytoplasm. But anyway, because of that, it's a very, very stable pathogen. And the likelihood that we're going to see significant mutations, and I say significant because you'll get like 1 in every 100,000 base replications, but the likelihood that you're going to get significant mutations is very, very low. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't lose sleep over monkeypox just yet. I could be proven wrong, in the future. I hope I'm not, but I wouldn't lose sleep over it just yet. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a fantastic week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you guys all on Friday, where I think we're going to talk about the science behind steroids. So stay tuned for that. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, as always, stand up and question everything.